For centuries, it was a question that stumped some of the greatest minds in natural history.
The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, after finding no eggs, no young, and no reproductive organs, concluded that
it sounds wild, but what else could he think?
Even Sigmund Freud, long before trying to map the human psyche, famously spent a frustrated summer in Trieste.
The question was simple. Where do eels come from?
For the last 100 years, the modern version of this mystery has been one of the greatest in all of biology. Where do European eels go to have their young?
We knew they left the rivers and coasts of Europe by the millions, disappearing into the blackness of the Atlantic Ocean. But where they went to spawn, to create the next generation, was a complete blank on the map of human knowledge. It was a riddle that spanned an entire ocean, a puzzle that baffled scientists for a century. Until now.
This is the story of how one team, using groundbreaking technology, finally followed an eel on it.
This is the story of how science, after a century of searching, solved one of its oldest and most profound riddles.
To get just how big this discovery is, you first have to understand the sheer, maddening scale of the mystery.
The eel is not like other fish.
Most migratory fish you know, like salmon, are anadromous. They're born in freshwater, live their adult lives in the ocean, and then return to the exact river of their birth to spawn.
The eel does the complete opposite.
It's what's known as a catadromous fish.
It spends most of its life, sometimes decades, in the freshwater rivers and lakes of Europe and North Africa. But when it's time to reproduce, it undergoes a radical transformation and embarks on a one-way journey into the vast, open ocean.
For centuries, this disappearance was absolute.
People would see them leave, but no one ever saw them arrive anywhere.
No one ever found an adult eel with eggs.
It was as if they just vanished.
The first major clue didn't arrive until the late 19th century. Scientists studying plankton kept finding these bizarre, transparent, leaf-shaped creatures. They were so strange they were classified as their own species, Leptocephalus brevirostris. It wasn't until one was kept alive in an aquarium that the astonishing truth was revealed. The leaf-like creature wasn't a separate species at all. It was a larva. And as the scientists watched, it transformed into a juvenile eel. This was a bombshell. It proved eels had a larval stage that lived in the ocean. The mystery wasn't that eels sprung from mud. It was that their life began somewhere out in the sea.
But where? The man who would dedicate his life to that question was a Danish biologist named Johannes Schmidt.
Starting in 1904, aboard a research vessel named the Thor, Schmidt began a quest that would take nearly 20 years. His logic was simple, but pulling it off was a monumental task.
He reasoned that if the eel larvae were born in a specific place and then drifted on currents toward Europe, then the larva found closest to the spawning grounds should be the smallest.
And so, Schmidt began to sail.
Financed by the Carlsberg Foundation, the philanthropic arm of the famous brewery, he crisscrossed the Atlantic, dragging fine year after year, expedition after expedition. He and his crew painstakingly measured every single one.
Slowly, a pattern emerged.
The further west he sailed from Europe, out into the open Atlantic, the smaller the larvae became.
He sailed past the Azores.
The larvae were smaller. He sailed further, into the vast, empty expanse of the mid-Atlantic. They were smaller still.
It was a gigantic, oceanic game of hot and cold, played across thousands of kilometers.
Finally, after years of relentless searching, his expeditions led him to a strange, almost mythical region of the ocean.
A place where vast mats of floating seaweed accumulate. A place known as the Sargasso Sea.
There, in the warm, salty waters of the Sargasso, Schmidt found the smallest eel larvae ever recorded.
In 1922, he published his conclusion. The European eel travels thousands of kilometers across the Atlantic to spawn.
It was a stunning deduction. But there was a catch.
Schmidt had found the nursery, but he had never found a single adult eel or a single eel egg in the Sargasso Sea to prove it was the spawning ground. His theory was brilliant and incredibly well supported, but it was missing that final, direct proof.
For the next 100 years, that proof remained tantalizingly out of reach.
So why, in an age of DNA sequencing and deep-sea subs, did it take another full century to confirm Schmidt's theory?
The answer isn't a failure of science, but the biological genius of the eel itself. This is an animal that seems almost perfectly designed to keep its secrets. The eel life cycle is a multi-stage epic.
After hatching in the Sargasso Sea, it begins as that tiny, transparent, leaf-shaped larva, the leptocephalus. For months, even a year or two, it's carried by ocean currents, primarily the Gulf Stream, on a slow journey toward Europe.
As it approaches the continent, a miraculous transformation occurs. The larva morphs into a miniature, transparent glass eel. They arrive on the coasts by the millions and swim up into rivers.
As they move into freshwater, they gain pigment and become elvers.
And here, in the rivers and lakes, they enter the yellow eel stage.
They can live like this for years, even over 20 years, growing and feeding. All this time, their reproductive organs are completely dormant. Then, prompted by some unknown cue, the final, most dramatic transformation begins. The silver eel stage. Their skin changes to a dark back and a silvery belly, perfect camouflage for the open ocean.
Their eyes get bigger to see in the dim light of the deep.
And most incredibly, their digestive system shuts down and begins to waste away.
They will never eat again. All the energy needed for the massive journey ahead is stored as fat.
It's now a living torpedo, built for one final purpose: migration.
And what a migration it is!
Starting in the autumn, these silver eels begin their journey back to the sea, traveling thousands of kilometers to a single, remote destination.
This is where the challenge for scientists becomes almost insurmountable.
How do you follow a creature that travels mainly at night, at extreme depths, never needs to surface for air, and never stops to feed?
You can't just follow it in a boat. Early tracking tags were useless in the open ocean. For decades, the problem seemed impossible.
You could tag an eel in a European river, and it would simply disappear.
The ocean would swallow it whole.
Solving the riddle would require a technological leap.
As the 21st century dawned, that leap finally came in the form of the Pop-up Satellite Archival Tag, or PSAT. Scientists had used satellite tags to follow big marine animals like whales and sharks for years.
But those tags have to break the surface to transmit a signal to a satellite.
Eels are fish.
They breathe underwater and, as we now know, spend most of their migration hundreds of meters deep.
A standard tag would be like putting a cell phone on a submarine. The signal would never get out. The PSAT is different.
For weeks or months, as the eel swims, the PSAT doesn't transmit anything. It silently records data: pressure to measure depth, temperature, and light levels.
But here's the ingenious part.
The tag is programmed to detach from the eel after a set amount of time. Only then does it start transmitting its entire archive dataset, the complete diary of the eel's journey, to satellites passing overhead.
Critically, when the tag first surfaces, it gets a GPS quality fix on its location.
This pop-up location is the final known position of the eel.
This technology changed everything.
Scientists could attach the tag, release the eel, and then wait.
Months later, an email could arrive with the final coordinates and the entire secret history of the journey.
Studies throughout the 2000s and 2010s started using these tags with growing success, tracking eels from Ireland, France, and Sweden.
The data was astonishing.
It revealed eels were making massive vertical migrations every day, swimming down to 800 meters or more during the day. These studies painted the first real picture of the eel's ocean life, showing consistent migration paths toward the mid-Atlantic.
But they all ended in frustration.
The journey to the Sargasso was so long that no eel ever made it all the way there before the tag's battery died, or it was programmed to pop off. One major study tracked eels as far as the Azores, a Portuguese archipelago about 1,500 kilometers from mainland Europe. They were getting closer, but the finish line was still thousands of kilometers away. To finally crack the riddle, a new strategy was needed. What if, instead of starting from Europe, they started from that last known waypoint? What if they started from the Azores? This was the brilliant idea behind a 2022 study published in Scientific Reports, led by the UK's Environment Agency.
Tagging eels in the Azores would give them a crucial head start.
It would be like starting a marathon at the halfway point. With the limited life of the tags, this might just be enough to finally follow an eel to the end. And so, in 2018 and 2019, the team traveled to the Azores. They worked with local fishermen to capture 26 healthy female silver eels. One by one, they carefully attached the pop-up satellite tags, each a small cylinder no bigger than a finger.
Let's imagine one of those eels.
For maybe 15 years, she has lived a quiet life in a volcanic lake.
But now, her body has transformed.
Her eyes are wide, her skin is silver, and her mind is consumed by a single, ancient command.
She will never eat again.
Her entire being is focused on a destination she has never seen.
The scientists release her.
Instinct takes over.
She feels the pull of the deep and begins to swim. For the researchers, the hardest part begins: the waiting.
For the next year, their subject is gone. All they have is hope that the tag is still attached, the eel is still alive, and that someday, a satellite will pick up a faint signal.
Meanwhile, for our eel, the journey is all-consuming.
The recovered data showed her life became a grueling routine. As the sun rises, she dives. Down, 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 down she swims, away from the light and the upper ocean. As dusk falls, she ascends to the relative shallows of 200-300 meters to travel through the night.
Her journey isn't a straight line.
The data showed the eels navigated, possibly following underwater mountain ranges or sensing the Earth's magnetic field.
They moved at a steady pace, covering between 3 and 12 kilometers a day. But the ocean is full of dangers.
It's almost certain that some of the eels were eaten by deep-diving hunters like swordfish or sharks. For the scientists, every lost eel is a lost data point. For the eels, it's a life or death struggle.
Weeks turn into months.
She is alone in the vast blue desert of the open ocean.
She doesn't eat.
She doesn't rest. She just swims.
Southwest. Always southwest.
The fat her body built up over a decade is her only fuel. She is slowly consuming herself to power her own journey.
Back in the labs, the days tick by.
The maximum program duration for the tags is 366 days.
Will any of them last that long?
Will any of the eels travel fast enough?
The data from just one of these tags could provide the proof that has eluded science for 100 years. The data from just one of these eels could change everything.
It's the final chapter in a quest that began over a century ago.
And while we wait for that satellite to get the signal, it's a good moment to say that if you're enjoying this journey into one of biology's greatest mysteries, it's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference for us. Now, let's see where that signal comes from.
More than 6 months pass.
Then 9.
Then 12.
For the study's lead author, Ross Wright, and her international colleagues, the wait must have been agonizing.
The window for the tags to start reporting back was opening.
They would scan their inboxes, waiting for an alert.
Then it happened.
An email arrives. A tag has surfaced. A satellite, streaking across the sky at 28,000 kilometers per hour, passes over a remote stretch of the North Atlantic. It detects a faint signal from a tiny antenna bobbing on the waves below. It captures the signal, logs the coordinates, and forwards the data.
In a lab thousands of kilometers away, a scientist opens the file.
Inside is the final GPS location.
The pop-up point. And a massive file of archived data.
They plot the coordinates on a map.
For a moment, there must have been pure elation.
The point on the map wasn't in the mid-Atlantic.
It wasn't near the Azores.
It was squarely, undeniably, within the boundaries of the Sargasso Sea. It was the proof.
Data starts to flood in from the other tags. Of the 26 eels tagged, data was recovered from most of them, and 6 had made it. Their tags successfully detached and transmitted from within the historical spawning grounds first identified by Johannes Schmidt a century earlier.
One Japanese eel was tracked for 366 days, covering a straight-line distance of over 2,200 kilometers.
For the first time in history, scientists had direct evidence of adult European eels completing their migration to their presumed breeding grounds. They had followed the trail to its end. They had solved the 100-year-old riddle. As one of the study's authors tweeted at the time, "For the first time ever, we followed eels to their spawning grounds." Now, to be precise, the scientists did not see the eels spawning.
No one has yet witnessed that final act in the wild. But what they did was prove that adult eels arrive in the Sargasso Sea. It confirmed Schmidt's brilliant deduction, not through inference, but through direct tracking. It closed the loop. The map was no longer blank. Solving a century-old puzzle is a monumental achievement.
But this discovery goes far beyond just satisfying our curiosity.
It's a critical lifeline for a species teetering on the brink of extinction. The European eel is listed as critically endangered.
Its populations have plummeted, with the number of young eels arriving in Europe declining by as much as 95% since the 1980s. For decades, you couldn't effectively protect a species when half its life was a complete mystery. How do you protect its breeding grounds if you don't know for certain where they are? This is why the 2022 tracking study is so important.
It provides the concrete evidence needed to drive international conservation.
It confirms that the Sargasso Sea is the destination, making its protection an absolute priority. The Sargasso Sea Commission, an international body working to conserve this unique ecosystem, now has the definitive proof it needs to push for stronger protections. By finally revealing the migration routes, scientists can better understand the threats eels face in the open ocean. Knowing their travel corridors and depths can help enforce regulations on high seas fishing to reduce the chance they're caught by accident.
It allows conservationists to focus their efforts where they'll have the most impact.
We now have the full map of one of the most incredible migrations on planet Earth. The challenge now is to use that knowledge to ensure this ancient, mysterious, and wonderful creature continues to...
For 100 years, the question was where? Where do the eels go? Science, through incredible ingenuity and persistence, has finally answered it.
They go to the Sargasso Sea.
They travel thousands of kilometers,
diving to crushing depths, on a final, fatal journey to the place where they were born.
But in science, every answer leads to a new, more fascinating question.
The mystery of where is solved.
But the mystery of how remains wide open.
How does a creature born in a European river that has never been to the Sargasso Sea know how to get there?
How does it navigate with such precision across thousands of kilometers of seemingly featureless ocean through total darkness?
The data gives us clues, but no firm answers.
Do they have a built-in magnetic sense, like sea turtles and salmon?
Do they follow a subtle chemical trail in the water?
Do they navigate using the stars, even from the deep?
Or is it some combination of all of these? A sophisticated navigation system we're only just beginning to imagine.
The solution to one of biology's greatest riddles has given us an even more profound one to ponder.
We've found the destination, but the map the eel carries in its mind remains a secret. The story of the eel is a powerful reminder that even in our fully explored world, there are still fundamental mysteries hidden in the deep.
We now know where the eel's journey ends.
But in many ways, the journey to truly understand and ultimately protect this incredible species is just beginning.